Hey everyone, this is Adam Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology, and today we're going to take a look at Mars's upcoming square to Saturn. Mars is entering the sign of Sagittarius, where it will immediately make a square to Saturn in Pisces. This is coming over the weekend. We looked yesterday at the Sun's entrance into Sagittarius and its square to Saturn in terms of what makes the transit so difficult. And I said something. Yesterday I said, with understanding, there's freedom. And I think that is the golden opportunity that astrology provides us with. There are all sorts of seasons in life that we walk through daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, for long periods of time in our life that, create major chapters of our life. And astrology is there to help us understand the archetypal nature of these different periods of time so that we can live through them more consciously and find more, let's call it, participatory value. It helps to understand what makes a transit difficult, because once you have that understanding, in a weird way, even though superficially it's maybe still difficult, internally there's a kind of knowing, there's a kind of freedom, and there's a kind of appreciating that actually can take place. So our goal today is to try to understand what makes Mars-Saturn combinations, especially squares and oppositions, so difficult. Anyway, before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you're new to the channel, welcome. I hope you enjoy the content. You can find transcripts of any of my daily talks on the website, nightlightastrology.com. I also want to remind you that we are on our third day of my 10th annual Kickstarter campaign. We have a goal this year to reach, which is 1,777 backers by the new year. We're off to a good start this week. Thank you, everybody who's already pitched in. We have a long ways to go and a lot of backers that we need the support of to reach our goal this year. I'm going to take you over to the preview page and show you what it looks like. So when you scroll down on the Kickstarter page, and you'll find the link, by the way, to the Kickstarter. I should have mentioned that right away. You'll find the link to the Kickstarter in the comments section of this video or the description of this video. And when you click on that link, you'll be taken over to here, and you can pitch in $5, $10, anything and everything makes a difference. We're trying to grow our audience and grow support for the channel. I make all the content on the year for free. And at the end of the year, the last 40 days, I go into a period of sort of like concentrated prayer and prep for the year ahead. I write all of my content for the entire year ahead in advance in terms of what I'm going to talk about and what I want to cover. And during that time, I also pray for support, that the channel would find support. When you support this channel and all of the work we do year round, you're also supporting a lot of really cool things. And we try to make sure that we say thank you by offering rewards when you donate. So for example, you'll find if you scroll down a bunch of cool rewards, including the Astrology of 2024 video, which is a long talk that I do on all the major astrology of the year ahead. I don't offer that anywhere else. There's a year ahead horoscope reading. Alex and I sat down and created a lengthy video for each sign, whether you do your sun sign or your rising sign, to tell you what the major transits for 2024 are going to be for your sign. Those are individual videos. You can pick one up when you donate. You can find my new book, The Oracle Speaks, and get in on that. You can also pick up any of the masterclass series that I did in 2023. There's a bunch of interesting talks. They're all 4-part talks, 8 to 10 hours worth of content that I don't release anywhere but through the masterclass series. There's a couple of different readings. I have the horary readings that I offer. And also a year ahead mini reading that looks at the most significant transit in your birth chart for the year ahead. I personally record that for you. And then when you continue to scroll down, you'll see that we have different class bundles. You can join in on our 24 masterclass series, our Roots and Spheres class. The best deal we offer are the bundles. So you can save significant amount on our online training programs. We have 4 years worth of online training courses, year 1, year 2, year 3, and horary astrology. And you'll find that those are, if you go all the way down to the 10th anniversary special, you can bundle those together and they become almost 75% off per class when you bundle all 4 together. And then there's other bundles you can choose as well that save you a lot of money off the regular cost of tuition. So we thank you so much, again, to everyone who's already pitched in and supported. Remember, when you support the channel and the Kickstarter campaign every year, it does a bunch of cool stuff. The big one is we're building a donation-based reading clinic that's set to launch hopefully in the first couple months of the year, if everything goes well, but it will be launched during 2024. We've been building that over the course of the past year. So that's going to be in place. We built a community herbal medicine garden where we had free events and gave away a lot of medicine last summer. You guys helped us build that. You support all of the need-based tuition modeling that we use, as well as all of our flexible pricing, which serves a huge amount of people who otherwise couldn't take an astrological training program. You support a staff of people that goes into supporting me and making sure that we get content out for you guys 5 days a week. And of course, you support me and my family. This is how I earn my living. So I thank you again so much for considering and taking a moment to say, do I value this channel? Does it do something special for me? And if it does, what can I pitch in and support this community with? So anyway, now on that note, let us take a look at the astrological transit that we're focusing on today, which is Mars's square to Saturn. Here is the chart, and I want to just take you through. Here we go. So we're going to you can see that Mars enters Sagittarius on Friday, and we get a square almost immediately between Mars and Saturn. Now, this square between Mars and Sagittarius and Saturn and Pisces is going to come through really Saturday, the 25th. But you'll be experiencing it, if we give it about a 3-degree range, you'll be experiencing it all the way through next Wednesday, with the most intense parts probably coming the rest of this week through the weekend. So that is the little degree range. You can see Mars in Sag, Saturn in Pisces. Both are interestingly ruled by Jupiter. Mars is also in the bound of Jupiter, if you look carefully at that little outer planetary wheel. And Jupiter is retrograde, but getting ready. It's getting closer and closer to stationing and turning direct. This is kind of like the last quarter moon moment for Jupiter. And so in a weird way, this cycle is tied into Jupiter. And that's something that we're going to be looking at a little bit later, probably in tomorrow's video, but maybe Friday's. But anyway, we're going to talk about the implications of everything being very Jupiterian as Jupiter is approaching its station to turn direct, and what that might mean. Today, what I want to talk about is, Mars-Saturn has a reputation for being difficult, just like the Sun-Saturn does. So what we can do is we can spend some time trying to understand why it's difficult. Like I said at the beginning, if you understand something, it brings a greater degree of freedom, and you're free to move about the cabin, even if you're on an airplane ride called Mars-Saturn, which that just sounds like someone would, like a piece of luggage would fall on your head, or like you'd get into a slap fight with someone who wouldn't move or something. It does not sound like a wonderful airplane ride to be on. But let's just say, well, we're on that ride, we're on that roller coaster or whatever. But if you understand the nature of the ride you're on, it changes the nature of how you experience it. And that's what our goal is for today. So why is Mars-Saturn so difficult? Okay, so this is one very interesting thing to think about. You have cutting as a Mars signification and separation as a Saturnian signification. Not surprisingly, when you put cutting and separation together, you get the act of sacrifice. There have been acts of sacrifice in the human experience for thousands of years, and some of them are pretty messed up, right? And some of them are very everyday, very mundane, and we can all understand and relate to. Anything in life that you want to get good at, for example, an instrument or singing or dancing or a sport or a skill or a craft, requires some degree of sacrifice. On the other hand, sometimes there can be like a masochistic tendency. People who are constantly making sacrifices are sometimes people who think, well, if I just keep tearing more hunks of myself off, I'm going to get love from other people. Or, there's all sorts of dysfunctional shadows around the act of sacrifice. But there's also a way in which sacrifice is a sacred part of life. And that's in a nutshell why this transit is difficult, because it is a transit that has long been associated with the act of sacrifice. Okay, so, for example, we have thousands of years ago the belief that in order for the rain to come and bring forth an abundance of food or crops or vegetation, for vegetation to grow and the rain to come, that you needed to kill animals, offer them to the gods, and then they would be happy, and then they would bring the rain. So there is a long-standing belief that there are higher powers that require that we enter into some kind of bloodletting or cutting or separating off of parts of ourselves and offering to them in order for them to give something of their selves back. So you also have this very you have like the whole history of like compensatory sacrifice, or kind of transactional, um, a transactional model of the universe. You want to get something, you got to give something. And what I want to say is that there's nothing inherently wrong about this model. How could there be? Because it is a model that has existed. It's part of reality, apparently. So, and it makes sense to us. It makes sense that you can't get good at, for me, I'm thinking about playing the guitar. You can't get good at playing guitar without practicing. And so there's some sense that like there are desires that we have that we cannot reach, we cannot taste or achieve unless we put some blood, sweat, tears, and sacrifice into what we're doing. So anyway, there's the number one thing that we can say about Mars-Saturn and why it's difficult is that the act of sacrifice isn't easy. There are obviously examples of a sacrificial attitude that in and of itself is problematic. I mean, set aside if you have the right kind of sacrifice, right? It's like, well, maybe there's just a very legitimate thing you want to do, like, again, get better at something. Okay, sacrifice is required, and nobody really bats an eye at that. I mean, it's just known. You got to put the work in to get something out of it. But there's all sorts of problems with sacrifice. Not just one problem, but first and foremost is that sacrifice isn't easy. Mars and Saturn as a pair suggest that you're going to have to cut a little hunk of your metaphorical flesh off from yourself, separate it from yourself as a way of getting something done or accomplished. I mean, there's lots of Mars-Saturn combinations, but one of the big Mars-Saturn combinations is the act of sacrifice. And sacrifice isn't easy, and that's what makes this hard. But number two is that making the right sacrifice, maybe that's even harder. And by that, I mean, what is the right sacrifice of your time, your energy, your resources, your body? What is the right sacrifice? I think one of the hardest things that we're faced with every day is we have a lot of different desires. Almost all of those desires, will require time, energy, effort, maintenance. And so then we have to look at all of them and say, like, well, what do I prioritize among my desires? Which sacrifices are the right ones to make? I mean, in other words, it's just not easy to, like, okay, sacrifice is going to be required if you want to be a parent. Sacrifice is going to be required if you want to be an astrologer. Sacrifice is going to be required if you want to be a dog owner. My dog is sleeping back there. I think you can see her. There she is. Sleeping Hilda. She requires sacrifice, sacrifice of my time, my energy, my effort, my care and devotion. Even care and devotion. Like, it's easy to see like, oh, it doesn't require sacrifice. It requires devotion. Okay, yeah, but devotion is not always easy, and devotion will often require sacrifice. So the point is just, I mean, obviously there are very soft and gentle and loving ways of developing anything. Like, you can very gently and devotedly get better at anything, so it's not like the only model for getting something that you desire is to these like hard acts of sacrifice where you're taking a knife and, again, cutting off a part of your own, a limb to, and throwing it into the fire and offering it to the gods and hoping that something happens, that, you get something that you want. But again, it's like one of the hardest parts about Mars-Saturn is that sacrifice is not easy, no matter what it is. For most of us, we experience it as a kind of labor. And then making the right sacrifice isn't easy. How much time and energy have you put into things that didn't reciprocate, or that didn't pan out the way you thought they would, or that you put in the time and effort and energy, and then when you got to the results, you realize you didn't even really want that. You didn't even really want what you set out to achieve in the first place. I can't tell you how many times I sit down with clients and they'll say, well, I went to school for this and that, and I really thought it was what I wanted to do. And then I got into the job and maybe I've made some money, or maybe I've even gotten promotions. And all of a sudden I feel like it's empty and it's not really what I thought it was going to be. And I made all this sacrifice to get here, and I'm not even really happy with it. It's like sacrifice isn't easy. And then making the right sacrifice isn't easy, because you can put a lot of time and energy into things that, it's no guarantee will have made it worth it. And that's what's hard about Mars-Saturn, is that Mars-Saturn will turn up the volume on the need to sacrifice, on the need to make the right sacrifice, on the awareness that the outcome and circumstances, the outcomes matter. Like, well, I'm going to have to choose among different things to pour my energy into. It's like, well, if you're gonna rip off a finger and throw it into the sacrificial fire of the universe, it's overwhelming to do that, and then to consider that you have to ask for the right thing in response. That's hard. Number 3 is that making the right sacrifice for the right reasons isn't easy as well. We can, for example, be ready to sacrifice. We can think we know what we want to sacrifice for, but we can be doing it for the wrong reasons. For example, I want to get good at this or that skill, and I'm ready to make the sacrifice to do it. But the reason I want to get good at this or that skill is so that people will validate me and love me. That's problematic. That, generally speaking, if you're doing something only for the sake of being validated by other people, and it's missing that inner space of love and devotion, like, I actually like this, I actually love this, and so I'm willing to sacrifice. If it's just, well, I'm going to do this, I'm going to make this big sacrifice and go to med school and make a shitload of money because then I'll be rich and powerful. And I'm not saying, I run into this all the time. I'm not trying to be a jerk, but like, people go and do tremendous amounts of sacrifice and they pour their hearts into it and they get really good results, only to find out they didn't do it for the right reasons. So that's a lot of pressure. Do you feel the pressure? That's an important, like, Mars-Saturn keyword is pressure. The pressure to sacrifice, to make the right sacrifice, to have the right reasons for making the right sacrifice. None of this is easy. And frankly, most of us aren't qualified. It's like, it's above our pay grade to know, to make a sacrifice with sort of like chin up and chest out, courageous, and then to make the right one and for the right reasons. Who can bear that? You know what I mean? It's like, most of us mess that up a good amount in our lives. We get that whole equation wrong. And it's not that, there's no penalty for getting it wrong. As far as I can tell, the universe supports our learning experience. Like, we're just here to learn. But it doesn't feel that way with Mars-Saturn. It feels like you've got to get it right. And that's what makes the transit kind of difficult. The number 4 reason is that not being attached to the results of sacrifice isn't easy either. So you're willing to make a sacrifice. You've got the right sacrifice. You make it for the right reasons. And then guess what? It doesn't pan out. You make the sacrifice and it never amounts to anything. Whew, that's even harder. Or it leads to a result that you did not predict, that you didn't like. I once heard someone describe Mars-Saturn as a pressure cooker. And I think this is why. Because you can have all the right reasons and motivations and the right kind of, the willingness to do hard things, and then none of it can turn out, and like, it doesn't necessarily turn out in your favor. It doesn't give you something that is like, you're not always rewarded for this kind of work or process. And that's befuddling to us. Continuing to have an element of our lives that is sacrificial when the results aren't there also isn't easy. If you have a few experiences in your life of putting a lot of work and sincere effort and sacrifice in for some good reasons based on things that you love, and you don't get the result you're looking for, you don't get a job that pays well, you don't have anyone really validating or appreciating your creative work, or you never really feel like it's going anywhere, and you've put a lot in and it's come from your heart, it is then easy to think, well, it's not worth it, and then often it's it's going to be natural for us to seek ways of trying to take a path of least resistance. It's not worth it to put so much into things. Become cynical. The hardest thing to develop, in my experience, is a belief or an understanding that sacrifice for nothing other than the act of sacrifice is a worthwhile endeavor. That putting time and energy into things you love for good reasons and not being attached to the results is a worthy process. That it's not about what you get in return. It's not how things turn out. It's not what comes of it all. It's just that that activity does something good for the soul, in the same way that going for a jog or a hike and working up a sweat is somehow just good for the body. That an act of sacrifice, and I mean, hopefully not acts of sacrifice that, like, we're not trying to harm ourselves here. I think we're trying to talk about this from a very everyday standpoint. Putting the time and energy in without attachment to results is a worthwhile endeavor. That it has its own rewards, that it is its own reward, regardless of what comes back, whether the gods send the rain or not. That is really hard. I think that is one of the hardest things to do, because my dog is motivated by treats. You know what I mean? Affirmation for good work done and treats, treat training. It's like, and we're not that different. Like, we need to be encouraged, and we need to see that hard work and sacrifice pay off, even in the smallest ways. We need to feel appreciated and seen for the work we put in, for the blood, sweat, and tears that we've, thrown into that cosmic fire. So I think it is really hard when Mars-Saturn shows up and denies us results. It says, you know what, you've put in a lot of hard work and that's great. We're not going to give you the result. What do we do when that happens? I think the hardest thing to do, honestly, is to say, it's okay. That was enjoyable. That was hard, but that was a good activity in and of itself. I'm not going to give up the sacrificial attitude, a sacrificial dimension of my psyche and my relationship with the universe isn't going to be dependent on what I get from that act. This is a deepening experience that often happens for people around Mars-Saturn transits. Number 6, not developing an ego around sacrifice or the results of sacrifice isn't easy. Here's the thing. You can develop a kind of, your ego can develop some, you can, how can I put this? What I mean by ego is you can develop a big ego, a problematic ego. And you can develop that in a couple of different ways. One, look at me. Look at all the work and time and energy I've put in, and look at what it's gotten me. I'm so fantastic. I'm so sacrificial. I'm so hardworking. But, okay, so I'd say 90% of the people that I have met who have done fantastic things and put in a lot of time and work and energy, a lot of people that I've admired have, that I've gotten to know in my life, have talked openly about the challenges of not developing an ego around success or hard work or time put in, that it's a temptation. It's like a natural temptation that comes with the sacrificial act and the results that come from it. But it goes back to, have you recognized the value in the act of sacrifice without any attachment to the results? Because if you have, then you're able to recognize, yes, this process sometimes yields fantastic results, but it's not because I'm so special. Because it just as easily could have been that I put in all that time and energy, and for whatever reason that I don't understand, it didn't turn out that way. And you have to keep that perspective. Not developing an ego around hard work, sacrifice, and the good results you get from it is not easy. It's a temptation that I think all of us face. It's also easy to develop an ego around the disappointments and failures of your efforts. Well, I put in a lot of time and energy, and woe is me. It's not fair. And then you can develop resentments and a chip on the shoulder and bitterness and cynicism. And that can come about because we think we're justified to, is justifiable to develop such an attitude when I've put so much in and I feel cheated. So it is not easy for us to handle the success or the failure that comes along with acts of sacrifice and hard work. Number 7, this one's a little bit different. We're going to go in a different direction now. By the way, actually, before I do that, let me go back one step and share with you guys something that I think is really interesting. So I actually looked up the etymology of the word sacrifice. And one of the things that it means is an offering. An offering. I'll put it, it's so simple. We all know this. And it probably sounds trite, but it's like, I'm a parent, right? And I think the universe has this parental dimension to it. I don't think the universe is like a dad or a mom, right? But I think it has like dad or mom qualities. It's like there's a way in which we interact with the universe and we experience it like a mother or father. So I can use parenting analogies sometimes. They feel right. When my daughter comes up to me and she shows me, look at the hard work that I've done, this or that. I go, wow, that's amazing. That's so good. And I affirm her and I encourage her. And then she looks at me and she goes, so can I have a cookie now? And there's times as a parent where you have to be like, you did a great job, but you don't get a cookie right now, And then there's other times where most of the time it's not because she asks for it. Sometimes she does, and I'll give her a cookie. But yeah, you give her a cookie. That was great work. She's pretty innocent. You can tell when it's sort of devious or when it's innocent. and then sometimes does a great job, hard work, and she's not asking for any attention. And then all of a sudden, I just want to pour it on her. I want to, you know what I mean? So it's a funny like hide and seek game that we also have to play with our own desire to be rewarded. We have to hide that from ourselves, like don't go there. And that seems to like it. We seem to do better because we get to experience the honor and the reward of the hard work. And then also without paying attention to it, it seems more conducive to good things coming. And I don't think that's because there's like a law at play. Exactly. I think it's more sensitive and relational than that. Anyway, so an offering is something that you make freely, generously from the heart. That is a way of thinking of sacrifice that maybe, maybe that's an adjustment we can make to our thinking somehow. All right. Anyway, number 7, experiencing persecution isn't easy. Persecution is the etymology of the word persecution, speaking of etymologies, is to follow, pursue, or hunt down. Ooh, that's not like, that doesn't sound fun. So Mars is the hunter. Mars is the planet of persecution as well as the planet of martyrs. Saturn is the planet of scapegoats and outcasts. When you combine these two planets, one of the themes that often comes up is the experience of being hunted down and targeted as an other. You will see acts of, like prejudice and racism and religious intolerance and all sorts of othering and pursuing or hunting the other or feeling pursued or attacked as an other somehow. So it was interesting recently. Someone was like, they were like, isn't it nice? We were at a family gathering and they're like, isn't it nice? You do something so different for a living, isn't it nice that no one brings it up? Like everyone is so, like everyone's so, like courteous and like no one brings it up. I was like, that's a weird thing to say. So I said, yes, I said, honestly, I looked at this person, I go, honestly, yeah, it is relieving for me that no one brings up that I'm such a third-rate citizen. I was joking. But like the person looked at me and they were like, oh, yeah, I mean, come on. Think about what you're saying. But that kind of othering, you can experience, some people experience that way more than I will ever know, certainly. I've experienced it. I was bullied in high school and that was a really challenging time in my life. And I would say the only way I've really experienced it as an adult is in terms of how people treat me when they hear what I do for a living, which I have experienced a lot of, like not so nice treatment. Sometimes it's not said, but you can feel it. And sometimes it's directly said. So that's about it for me, though. Like I don't, there's little things, but some people have experienced it, again, like if you're born in certain orientations, skin colors from different parts of the world, speaking different languages in different parts of this country, it can be really bad, and all over the world. This has been a thing for a very long time, that people other and persecute. And first and foremost, when Saturn and Mars comes up, one of the classical significations is persecution. And so is there anything easy about persecution? Not that I'm aware of. I think it's a very difficult experience, and one that is often traumatizing and harming. And, so that's it. This is a transit that can be about persecution, and persecution just isn't easy. But more than that, number 8 is that enduring, trusting, by trusting, I mean trusting, still maintaining a sense of graceful, trusting positivity about life when you're being persecuted is not easy. My favorite people, I think some of my favorite heroes, probably like all of you, are those people who have seen extreme forms of persecution and somehow not lost their faith or trust in the basic goodness of human beings or the basic goodness of the universe. People aren't born this way. They learn these kinds of behaviors. And you've heard that probably said before. And I don't know if that's true or not. I'm just saying it's that, can you endure and live through being harassed or persecuted and somehow maintain a sense of faith, optimism, hope, trust, goodness, cheeriness, vitality? Not that you need to not grieve or be hurt or angry, not that any of those experiences aren't valid, but like, can you move through them and still maintain your sunshine? It's like you can hurt me, but you can't steal the basic sunshine burst of my heart. You know what I mean? Mars-Saturn is about, can we endure and still, especially when things are like rocks and slings and arrows are kind of coming at us, and maintain our shine. I don't think that's easy. I think that's one of the hardest things out there. So you hear me here suggesting that we should maintain the shine. I'm not saying that's easier, that I would know how to do that if the persecution gets bad enough. I'm not saying I'm capable, but it is an archetypal reality that we seem to celebrate people who get kicked and they don't become bitter. They don't become like the thing that's persecuting them. Mars-Saturn is like, can you endure and not become like the thing that's afflicting you? The shadow or menacing, monstrous darkness that's can you somehow keep your light intact? Not holding grudges or developing resentments isn't easy. So when you're being persecuted, it is not easy. Like, I'll tell you that as soon as there were, oh man, I mean, I've kind of shared this before. There's been people I would say in my life as an astrologer who have openly criticized what I do as though it is fake, phony, bogus, not valid, something like that. And what's really hard for me is, as soon as I'm not around that person, the desire to shit talk that person, or the feeling that I'm justified in like a very negative and antagonistic view toward that person. That doesn't mean I have to like them, doesn't mean that I have to be friends with them, or it doesn't mean I can't set really healthy boundaries. But it is hard not to carry a chip on the shoulder, develop resentment, grudges, a vindictive attitude toward people that have harmed me or, come at me just because I'm an astrologer. So that's a challenge. And that's why this transit is hard, because it will push us and tempt us at times to hold grudges or develop resentments. I'm angry and I'm not moving in what anger that I feel toward you because I'm justified. And it's very Mars-Saturn. It's like, yeah, well, the problem is that over time, that tension breaks things. Number 10, not building an ego identity around persecution isn't easy as well. For example, I've endured such persecution. Look at how special I am. Or again, just like sacrifice, if the things haven't gone the way that you've wanted to, it's easy to develop a kind of woe is me. Everything or everyone is against me. And so I'm justified in having a kind of resentful or embittered personality or something like that. It is really challenging. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying I've been pushed to my limit. I think I could very easily become someone with a chip on my shoulder, resentful, holding grudges, vindictive, angry, traumatized. That could happen to me. So I'm not sitting here thinking that any of this is so easy. But that's what we're working with this transit. So why Mars-Saturn is so difficult? Because two of the major significations are sacrifice and persecution. Like, who wants to deal with that? Happy Wednesday. But I hope that in discussing these things, we have understanding, and with understanding comes freedom, so that we can learn how to have a relationship with archetypal experiences. Persecution and sacrifice are archetypal. They have been around for thousands of years in all different kinds of spaces and relationships. And, the more that we work into and understand the reality and the power of these experiences, what they can do for the soul, or how they can keep us from a soulful life, I think the happier we're going to be. And the more astrology is really playing its role in our life in the way that it should be. Astrology should be a part of a spiritual lifestyle that's helping us to be spiritually informed and living a more meaningful existence. So we'll end it there for today. I hope you guys are having a good one. We're going to look now at Jupiter's role in both of these Sun, Mars, Saturn squares that we visited this week. We're going to take a look at what it means that these things are happening in light of Jupiter's retrogradation and stationing to turn direct, because Jupiter has a ton of power over all of these planets right now. And that's an interesting thing that we have yet to explore. So we'll be doing that, I think, tomorrow or Friday. Stay tuned for more. And don't forget to pop on over to the Kickstarter. Help us reach our goal of 1,777 backers. If talks like this do something good for you, please consider pitching in and supporting all of the projects that we do and all the good things we try to do, including the donation-based reading clinic that we're going to be putting in place here in the new year. Okay, that's it. Take it easy, everyone. Bye.